Hello. Our story begins following a terrible battle, a few months following Teth and Christophsis, actually. Anakin and Ahsoka had won, but the casualties were far worse than they should have been. The 501st got hunted down from various sides, and Anakin took the brunt of the blame himself, and he felt it personally. None of the troopers were outwardly upset, not even privately, at him. It wasn't that he led them into a trap or put them into a situation to fail. It was just a horrible series of events. In the middle of a skirmish for territory in the Mid-Rim, they set their troopers on the ground when Admiral Yulorn's fleet was blindsided. He had to direct the fleet back into action to defend themselves and everyone on the surface. At the same time, waves of troops deployed to the planet and attacked the Jedi and their forces all at once. It was terrible. Rex, Ahsoka, and Anakin did everything they could to pull together a strong defense that worked long enough for Yulorn to win the space battle. This, for Ahsoka though, was the first time she had seen Anakin in such a state. During the Battle of Ryloth on the ground invasion, the two of them bickered lightly about the cost of war. Anakin was preparing his student for a life of combat, because he couldn't foresee the end of the war. He did so with light-hearted resolve, something that continued to develop as they grew closer as master and apprentice. But here on this battlefield, she saw the toll of the war and leadership on her master. Anakin was quite somber. He spoke with a frog in his throat. He mumbled, forced his head high, and gave directions to everyone, including his apprentice. Anakin actually forced her away from the battlefield the second they won. The smoke hadn't cleared, but he could tell that the sight would be traumatic. So Ahsoka saw a very early onset of what Anakin was dealing with. She never really saw how bad it got. Once most of the 501st returned to the fleet, Anakin and Rex walked amongst the bodies. They were so disheartened. It was their highest death toll in a battle, a number that was far greater than the combined deaths of some of their most arduous battles. No one really knew how to just move on from this. Rex knew that they'd have to put paperwork to Republic High Command to request for additional troops, but their unit would be far smaller than they could really afford at this current moment. The Jedi Council would require more output from them as other Jedi generals used this location as a forward command post in enemy territory. Anakin had absolutely no concern about going back into action. It was just a devastating loss. He pushed himself to be a good commander on behalf of his troopers, and yet so many died on his watch. It was hard to internalize. As the clones and medics started burying the others, Anakin turned to Rex and promised him that this would never happen again on his watch. The clone captain explained heartily that no one blamed him. It was just an unfortunate circumstance in a long war. They were blindsided. The Separatists had the upper hand strategically. It really had only been a few months, but the war still felt unending. Captain Rex also told his Jedi General that the clones knew the cost of war. They were bred for this. They were meant to come out to these battlefields and do everything within their power to win, and if that came with death, then so be it. Anakin fell into a crouched position, and he mumbled again, this time to himself. Rex asked what was said, and his general pushed obvious tears away from his eyes and told his friend that their brothers didn't deserve that. Rex was grateful to have a leader like Skywalker, but he worried for what this train of thought would bring to his commander. They were all young warriors, which was the sickening part about this war. It wasn't like a century-plus-old Plo Koon and the completely eradicated 104th Battalion. Anakin was the oldest frontline warrior in this group at the age of, like, 20, aside from Yulorn. It was unfair of anyone to expect so much from them, but the 501st always put their best foot forward. Skywalker mumbled to himself again, this time to the dead, promising to never fail their alive brothers as he did here. Rex didn't hear this, but Anakin's resolve changed his entire demeanor. What once was a solemn and despondent general became a man possessed by one goal, the survival of his troops in every battle. The following week would have nightmares descend on Anakin's mind. He, during his time awake, not training Ahsoka, spent hours trying to come up with more effective strategy. The night terrors were very similar to the ones he experienced with his mother, less than a year before. Thematically, Anakin never really changed his interests. He wanted to protect and save everyone. There were clones inside of his division that fought in every battle with him that he didn't know personally. But the goal, in the end, was to protect life instead of waste it. It would be purposeless to let all these clones die in this war. Skywalker delved deep into military tactical history, but even he knew that wouldn't provide the answers he needed. The major problem with the Confederacy was how large their military was. It may have not been the most advanced fighting force the galaxy had ever seen, but at full strength it was one of, if not the largest militaries in galactic history. Anakin knew that simply siphoning through history lessons wouldn't change that size. He needed something direct and influential, a power that could save people from battle. Without any campaign slotted for the 501st, aside from minor skirmishes across the mid-rim to protect the planet they just conquered, now being used as a forward command post, Anakin had to meditate. Nightmares and what he thought were visions turned into prolonged, thoughtful sessions by himself. Anakin made sure that Ahsoka was trained and taken care of before he went into these meditative cycles. It was challenging to participate as a full-time master and general, while trying to connect to the Force in a deeper way, but he was better for it. Not only did taking care of Ahsoka's training help her development, but it lessened the weight on his shoulders. Without having to worry about missing a training session or a specific lesson, he could get everything she needed done and out of the way, before then immediately beginning what he really wanted to do: find secrets through the Force. It was perhaps the first time Anakin ever truly consulted the Force for answers. As a mechanic, there were always tricks to figuring things out, little quirks in a system, or flaws on a motherboard, or just the hydraulics on a starship. But masterful strategy, to best ensure one's troops survived anything thrown at them, that was a challenge, something that only a master of the Force should be able to develop. The most difficult part about this for Anakin was working through steps that every youngling mastered during their early training. Whether he had overlooked these lessons during his training, or it was all thrown together so quickly so he could become a Padawan with 3 years of training, he didn't really know. The fact remained, he trained himself in harmonizing with the Force, right here and right now. He found that quite helpful, and sometimes that was literally the best method, returning to lessons once taught and figuring them out with a new lens. One thing was for certain, he was a lot more patient now than he was when he was still a youngling. Mostly because of Ahsoka. People depended on him. Anakin couldn't mess this up. Ahsoka, Rex, and all the clones needed the best version of Anakin Skywalker. These meditations forced that out of him. He felt protected and surrounded by the mystical powers of the Force. On a Venator, meditating could be challenging. Troops had to move through the corridors on regular exercises. Alarms had to be sounded to ensure they could be used during battle. Repairs were frequent due to the battles and damage done to the vessel. So, to solve that, Anakin and a deployment of troops would go to the surface of any given planet to work on these meditations. The troops would conduct training exercises with Ahsoka, and Anakin would find himself a small perch to settle down on. While none of this would effectively bring him the answers he sought, it did help him in ways he could not yet understand. That was already a victory too. Perhaps what Anakin most needed to learn through these sessions was patience and the importance of trusting the process. Walking back through all the steps he missed or glossed over in the past as a youngling cemented himself to a more grounded understanding of the Force. He found that inside the several planets he visited, not at the Jedi Temple. That was partially a key too. The temple was enclosed, surrounded by so much raw energy. Nature, though, that called to Anakin. He could find a rock and feel the breathing of trees, or the humming of birds, or the march of tiny little insects on the surface. It was beautiful, calming, and everything he needed to better understand the Force. Upon the 501st return to Coruscant, he visited Jocasta Nu, the Jedi Archivist. She was always eager to help astute students of the Force. She never suspected that Anakin would become one of them, but he explained everything he wanted to know. Not just his feelings, but what he was trying to do. Master Jocasta, of course, knew the answer to his various questions, yet she was unsure if he was ready for the resolution. Obviously, meditation, preparation for battle, and the want to unite all troops into a more uniform power was just battle meditation. Anakin had done all the extra steps for coming around to that power, but to actually harness it wasn't just a matter of skill or mastery in the Force, but sheer concentration. Distraction often led to a failed battle meditation, which forced the leader attempting to use it to struggle. Jocasta explained that if he tried to use battle meditation and he failed during a conflict, then he might become more of a detriment to his troopers than without it. The Force worked in mysterious ways, everyone knew that, but this specific Force power could react negatively to an unfocused mind. Said mind could be nauseated following an unsuccessful attempt. For that, she worried if Anakin might be capable of handling this power. Master Jocasta wasn't going to withhold it, because she believed, and expressed frequently to her other archivists, that more Jedi should use battle meditation in a time of war. This didn't stop her from warning Anakin though. Firstly, she would conduct a training seminar with Master Yoda, who had just returned from his second trip to Toydaria since they joined the Republic. In the meantime, Anakin visited Padme. It may not seem all that relevant, but this interaction completely changed everything. Padme brought a certain sense of calmness to Skywalker, so when he returned to the Jedi Temple garden at the top of the structure, he was in the perfect condition to master battle meditation. This wasn't the first time Anakin trained with Yoda, but it would be his most exhilarating lesson, and also the most successful one. The three Jedi would sit down on the walkway with small little paths beneath them. They would face the tree, and Yoda, in the middle, walked them through the process together. Anakin paid very close attention as the Grand Master spoke in his riddled sentencing. The Force surrounds and it penetrates. This every Jedi knows. A battle meditation is the coordination of souls in the Force with one another. Yoda specifically pointed to Anakin's own natural powers. As the Chosen One, he had gifts that no other inside the galaxy had. He should be able to feel the Force flowing through every individual. Think a droplet hitting water. Souls fluctuate like ripples, perfect little flashes of life. Yoda saw it in his mind's eye. Imagine the droplet consuming the soul, filling it, being a part of it. This is natural. This is the gift of life, one that every sentient, every clone, and every Jedi feels. He asked if Anakin could see the droplet. Skywalker nodded. Yoda then continued to explain that these gifts weren't just his. Everyone's connection to the Force could be thought of as a community. Some have a greater relationship than others. As Yoda had found, most of the clones, if not all of them, were around the same in connection to the Force, meaning that this should be really easy. The Grand Master then told Skywalker to reach out beyond himself to Yoda and Jocasta. The Chosen One settled his mind, placing the top of his hands against his knees, and breathing in, then out. He could feel the drifting of breeze around him, the droplets existing within thousands and then millions of souls beyond that in the Ecumenopolis. This was why training on Coruscant could be so difficult, especially for those with struggling discipline. Yoda told Anakin to lower it. As he could feel this widespread sensation coming from Skywalker, Anakin, Yoda said, should be able to see and feel the droplets of those next to him. Focus on what he knows, on who he knows. Yoda and Anakin may have not had the best relationship, but Skywalker knew Yoda far better than he did the archivist, so he focused on Yoda. That droplet overlapped with Anakin's. Their souls could be connected with just a simple push. It wouldn't take that much. Anakin continued to concentrate when all at once they bonded. He felt the bond stiffen as the two of them became one. Yoda then explained that Anakin could use this connection to find Jocasta's to unite all three of them, which he then did with relative ease, because he had already bonded with Yoda. Now came the difficult part. Anyone could connect to someone else, but giving them strategy, focus, and a wider understanding of their surroundings was the challenge. It's why battle meditation was so difficult. Yoda walked Anakin through this again, with patience and then with pride. Anakin was a quick learner, and his dedication to applying this gift proved to make the lesson easier for all three of them. The application of strategy varied for individuals, but it allowed Anakin to feel what could best be described as a bubble surrounding them. It could be made smaller or enlarged, given the scenario, but it wouldn't be easy to feel or see with two individuals as talented with the Force as Jocasta and Yoda. However, with the clones, they would feel as if their eyes had been opened to an entirely new reality. They'd have a completely new understanding of every battlefield they faced, and a more efficient pathway to destroying their foes. Yoda eventually got around to how battle meditation could effectively work against sentient opponents. This included Separatist generals, Grievous, Ventress, potentially even Dooku. It would challenge them, but the more comfortable Anakin got with battle meditation, the easier it would become. The most difficult part, in all honesty, was what he had already done. Now, he could go and start with Ahsoka, Rex, and Yularen. Then everything after would be a breeze for the rest of his division. Literally. Skywalker was greatly appreciative, and once their session was done, Yoda told Jocasta how proud he was of Anakin in private. This was the student he believed Skywalker could always become, someone who, with the greatest application of discipline and patience, could become the best of them. Anakin never mentioned battle meditation to his allies before they returned to the battlefront. He instead continued practicing with it, utilizing it for Ahsoka and the clones' training regimens. Specifically, the circular cycle that forced Ahsoka to defend herself from all sides in a test with the clones. She was becoming much more skilled at it, and the battle meditation, to no one's surprise, made a huge difference. Though it should be said that it made a huge difference for the clones attacking and Ahsoka defending in this training regiment. It made her training accelerate in ways not even Skywalker believed possible. All of this would be challenged during their first engagement, a small skirmish between their fleet of 3 Venators and half a dozen Separatist frigates. Because the CIS vessels didn't carry many fighters, Anakin used his meditation on the clone pilots. Their ability to weave around vulture droids and cut them off from killing their brothers got nearly 10 times better than ever before. Clones were better pilots than the vultures anyways, but the vultures overwhelmed. They couldn't do that here. Some of these pilots were actually new additions too, as in they had never worked with these squads in the 501st before. The result of the skirmish would be some minor damage to the Venators, but not a single clone casualty. A true victory. This was both an incredible feat, but also the worst thing that could have ever happened to Anakin. He didn't get cocky and start thinking that it was all because of him, of course not. It actually made him slightly paranoid. A perfect track record isn't something that one can just repeat on a whim, and the results were skewed because of the type of battle. A skirmish with 6 magnificent frigates wasn't exactly a battle that would come with high casualty counts for the clones. Even without battle meditation, they typically would lose 1 in every 8 fighters, which wasn't really huge, making their casualties for a single skirmish of this size anywhere from 4 to 12 troops. Still a sad loss, but tolerable. Anakin had just set the bar so high for himself, and he would feel it the next time he entered an actual battle with meditation active. When the 501st entered a proper engagement with the CIS, Anakin faced one of the greatest heartbreaks since his mother's death. It wasn't a total loss like the one they faced prior to the battle meditation hysteria Anakin went through. Rather, it was a victory with considerable losses. The battle meditation worked well for everyone, especially Rex and Ahsoka. But because Anakin only had the reference of using that power in a small skirmish, this battle looked like a failure. He went from not letting a single soul die by using battle meditation to losing more than hundreds. It resulted in him absolutely losing his mind internally, and working even harder and more dedicatedly to actually saving everyone's lives. This continued far past this battle and into the second year of the Clone War, and far beyond. Anakin continued to beat up on himself for something so far out of his control. The battle meditation wasn't meant to make every conflict a perfect victory. It was simply designed to make troops more efficient. Like the aforementioned battle that broke his heart, there should have been greater casualties, but he didn't see it like that. The glass was beyond half empty, and he was the reason why. Instead of considering the difference his powers made, which saved lives, he believed he didn't make enough of a change. So he locked himself away, focused more on fixing everything he failed at. This did leave Ahsoka slightly neglected, and forced Yularen and Rex to come up with battle strategy in his absence. This also led to more nightmares for Skywalker too. It didn't result in anyone reaching out to the High Council about his struggle. They believed and trusted Skywalker. They knew he would come out of it, and while yes, he would, it did mean that every time there were casualties, he went right back to the drawing board. Now, this heavy-handed focus on the Force wasn't very healthy. It was actually quite negative. It turned what in essence is a meditation, a harmony with the Force, into a power to be used to save people from death. No one, especially not Yoda or Jocasta, understood that by giving Anakin access to these powers, that he would obsess over protecting people. It was perhaps one of his greatest character strengths and one of his greatest character flaws. He loved almost too hard. He'd be damned if any one of his men died, especially if they were Ahsoka or Rex. That would be unfathomable to him. Yet the one positive that did come from this unbreakable focus was that he actually became quite remarkable in the Force itself. Having so much undivided attention to the mysteries of balance and harmony actually made him a better quote-unquote Jedi. It just meant that he had to rally around himself. He was falling off the deep end here and there, and it was his job to stop that from fully coming to a completion. And that was the other side of the battle meditation. When there weren't casualties, he became more tied to the Force. His relationship with his very creator tightened, but it was also toxic. So while large battles, sieges, or campaigns came with death because of course they would, these skirmishes, fighter attacks, or smaller battles were perfect for building up his morale and confidence. Every time he had a deathless engagement, he believed that the ceiling could be expanded. Like his mechanical background suggested, there was always a cure to a problem. One just needed to have the technical savviness to figure it out. Anakin worked arduously on finding that key. It existed somewhere inside the Force, so when he didn't lock himself away and spent more time with his student or his former instructor, more answers slowly revealed themselves. This positioned Anakin to have a deeper trust in the High Council, because he could go to them for information. This was either at the request of Obi-Wan or Jocasta Nu. Battle meditation wasn't done by Jedi anymore, and the Council actually made it one of their mission statements to start using it again. Obviously, that would take a great amount of time to get started, so they instead helped Anakin develop his, as they started working on theirs. More than anyone, Anakin grew tighter with Yoda throughout this period of time. Now, just forming a relationship with the Grand Master or the Council didn't fix everything. Anakin wasn't quite outspoken like Qui-Gon or Dooku had been, but he didn't agree with the Council frequently. He did, though, enjoy the bonds he started to form. Battle meditation brought the best out of him, and even the worst, but the Council pushed him to thrive as they all collectively worked on how to trust one another despite their ranging differences. What aided Anakin in his more personal engagements, that being duels against Ventress before her betrayal, or Dooku, were the lessons from the counselors. Battle meditation really helped with his focus and serenity, but he hadn't quite gotten to the point where he could harm or disrupt Dooku's concentration in combat with battle meditation. Their continuous rivalry only frustrated them both more. It should be said, though, that because Anakin used battle meditation, he was more inclined to focus on light side powers. It technically could be used with the dark side, but Anakin found it in the light, and it would be much more of a burden for him to backtrack and master its darker iteration. While a majority of the war didn't really shift, there were certain engagements that did, because of the implementation of this power. Master Even Peel survived the Citadel escape. Ahsoka almost defeated General Grievous while using her own version of battle meditation during the Gathering, and several more members of the 501st survived large-scale battles. These minor shifts weren't massively impactful on the state of the war. Even Peel was still a widely adored Jedi Master inside the Council, and he continued to remain that after the Citadel. Grievous became more determined to hunt down and kill Ahsoka for evading him twice, almost killing him the second time, but Palpatine wouldn't allow it because that might force him and Anakin to fight. The 501st continued to grow more elite because of the meditation, but Palpatine still controlled the war, so the 501st just looked super successful under Anakin. Even if every Jedi inside the Council mastered the technique of battle meditation, Sidious and Tyrannus could still release more battle droids from the reserve military. It was a standstill, regardless of what the Jedi did to break the Separatists. Despite using battle meditation and growing closer to the High Council, they still made insanely stupid decisions that impacted Anakin's relationship with them, like not telling Anakin about Obi-Wan fake dying, truly a masterclass in brilliance. Every time they took a step forward, they took 3 back. At a certain point, Anakin started to value them for their information, rather than actually trying to build something sustainable with any one of them. And sadly, even though Anakin's meditation helped so many clones survive the Clone War and develop his own personal skills with the lightsaber, Dooku was still the generational talent that he was. He couldn't just be beaten because of battle meditation, and it actually made Dooku harder to beat. Due to Anakin not relying on the dark side to destroy his opponent, and Dooku's body not totally decomposing because of darkness, Skywalker couldn't overpower his opponent through darkness. Physically, a little bit, but not fully. Instead, there became a certain charm for both opponents. Fighting one another was flashy, elegant, and truly a masterful dueling experience. Anakin obviously wanted Dooku captured, but there was a certain thrill in the theatrics of their duels and dances. They swung like notes across sheet music. It was beautiful in a way, so much so that Dooku even started to enjoy it. Of course they hated each other, but Anakin wasn't becoming Palpatine's little monster yet. The darkness Dooku tried to bring out of Skywalker never really came. Throughout the rest of the Clone War, the clones of the 501st thrived the most off of Anakin's battle meditation. They were an unstoppable unit, even against the likes of Pong Krell. Anakin's initial meditation helped them throughout the entire Umbaran campaign. But these powers, despite how much Anakin tried to use them, couldn't control everything. That was perhaps the irony and the tragedy. Anakin became this great power, the one that controlled destiny. But fate, or unfortunate circumstances, sometimes sneak up on one. He did everything he could to control a war already controlled by someone else, and then Ahsoka was taken from him because of the temple bombing. She was fine, physically, alive, but their relationship was forever altered as a result. She left the Order to find her own path. That was devastating. Anakin continued, forcing his battle meditation further and harder, sometimes delving into the dark side just off of pure instinct, but that didn't change anything. It fractured Anakin more than he believed it could. Like how the Council took one step forward and several back, Anakin felt that way in every facet of his life, except with his partner, Padme. Until, of course, the whole Scipio incident where Rush Clovis thought that no actually means yes. Anakin took that personally. Then all of that disruption and chaos brought him through a duel with Dooku over Coruscant, resulting in Dooku's death mid-duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Then they returned to the capital at the end of the war. The nightmares were still yet another stitch in Anakin's continuous cycle of trying to control what couldn't be stopped. The end of the war was nigh. This time, though, thanks to his built-up relationships with the Jedi Masters inside the Council and Archives, Anakin decided for the first time to just let it all go. This was far from letting Padme die after having those visions, but the thing is, he had seen visions or dreams of Rex, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, even Yoda dying for the past 3 years. Ever since he picked up battle meditation, those dreams never went away, because the fear of failure beat away at him. Now, did adding Padme into that lineup make him especially happy? No, not really, but thanks to the continuous cycle and the fact that none of the aforementioned people did die, he didn't start panicking. He had the resources to reach out to individuals inside the temple in this time of need, but instead of trying to change everything like he always did, he finally stopped. Anakin didn't go to Yoda about the vision. He didn't throw a fit when he didn't become a master. He got a little upset after the whole mission thing, but afterwards, he just meditated. Instead of trying to rush things into place last second, he took himself to the pillars around the rim of the temple and knelt. He, in this moment of harmonization, used the Force to feed himself calmness, resolve, and direction. He had been looking in too many directions for all the wrong answers, and now he had something to hold on to, the Force itself. For the first time perhaps in his entire life, despite his connection to battle meditation, he became one with the Force as the Force was with him. Tired of the nightmares and surrounded by the ambience of the Coruscant skyline, Anakin became one with the very essence of the galaxy. He felt himself walking through lanes of hyperspace, smelling grass on moons far from here, and hearing the very heartbeat of the galaxy itself. By challenging himself, the Force rewarded him, not with the answers, not with the truth, but the potential of what letting go could do. Through the Force, Anakin saw himself with Obi-Wan and Padme at a resort-like location. He was laughing with his master as Ahsoka and Rex showed up, and two mysterious little silhouettes with them. He knew their names, but didn't say them. They knew his, it was Dad. The tiny figures addressed him as that and rushed him. He was defenseless, he couldn't stop it. And then it all came to an end. Anakin's eyes opened and a smile crested around his cheeks. Everything would be alright. He didn't need to control every aspect of his life, just what he had the power to stop or do. That's all it ever should have been, and the breaking point for him was the final wave of nightmares about his wife. Even though he found resolve, it didn't stop Anakin with struggling between Palpatine and the Jedi. He trusted the Chancellor far more, and didn't kill him when he had the chance to. It forced Anakin back to the temple to inform Master Windu. He believed that with Sidious in control over the Republic, they needed to act. So Mace, with even keel, asked Skywalker if he would like to accompany them. He was still quite conflicted, but he was also more trusted in the eyes of the Council, despite their constant failures with him. Anakin decided that he would join them for this mission. Alongside Windu and Even were Fisto, Kolar, and Tin. As the LAAT lifted off, out of the Jedi hangar bay, Anakin enacted a battle meditation. At this point, using the Force tactic was as simple as flexing one's hands. Anakin quickly harmonized with his Jedi brothers inside the vessel, and connected them to one another. Upon their arrival, Anakin trailed behind the Jedi Masters. Windu took point and immediately told Palpatine that he was under arrest. The Sith Lord, trying to work up some magic to save himself from the Jedi, implanted riddles into the Force to distract the Jedi. With Skywalker's battle meditation, it simply did not work. However, Sidious had a backup plan, the Sith Howl, which slightly disoriented the Jedi enough for Palpatine to launch Saesee through the wall. He could not kill him. Agan was disarmed but also not killed, thanks to Even stepping in the way. The shrieking of lightsabers pushed Anakin, Windu, Fisto, and Peel back into one of the other corridors as Palpatine ignited his second saber and slashed in between his opponents. The Jedi weren't incapable of stopping this, but they also couldn't get a counter move in. Due to all the bodies in the way, Mace couldn't solo focus on the Chancellor, because he had to move away from Anakin or even strikes. This did not disrupt their flow though. These movements were effortless because the Jedi worked within a continuous hived mind, thanks to the battle meditation. Their sabers were directed at Palpatine, and he swept between opponents, using furniture to avoid attacks and throw it at unsuspecting opponents. With Agan returning to the fight, Sidious pushed down on Even and overpowered him. The Jedi's ear was cut clean off and he was flung through the window, but held on before falling to his death. Anakin dropped back as Fisto was thrown into him. Saesee and Windu challenged the Chancellor, with Kolar getting impaled by the flip of another lightsaber. Sidious shoved the weapon down and released the weapon, fighting with only one. The other Jedi swarmed him as Kolar died on the ground. Anakin jumped through the air as Saesee and Windu spun backwards. Palpatine collided with Skywalker, and they interlocked, facing one another. Anakin told his opponent that this was the end for him. Palpatine shoved forward, trying to break free from Anakin's overpowering hold, but it was too much. Skywalker knew Sidious couldn't break his grip. He wasn't strong enough, so Anakin let up, allowing Palpatine to overreach just enough for Windu and Saesee to swing in. Their sabers swept up, removing both arms, and with one final blow, Anakin jabbed straight between them, killing Palpatine in a strike to his heart. The Sith Lord had been defeated, and yet more work sat ahead for the Jedi. Anakin, in this moment of triumph, didn't know whether or not he should be happy. There were so many unknowns going forward, but he chose this path because he wanted to be here to help, and to see if what Palpatine confirmed was really the truth. As he clearly saw, Palpatine was the Sith Lord, but that wasn't any longer Anakin's problem. Windu planned on dealing with everything himself, so everyone aside from Kit Fisto returned to the Jedi Temple while they handled this mess. Anakin, despite wanting to wait around inside the council chambers, returned to Padme's residence to spend the night with her. He'd fall asleep by accident early into the evening, and it would be his first true night without night terrors, stressed dreams, or anything of the sort. It'd be a night of pure freedom and weightlessness. It was because he gave up his control that he felt this way. By putting so much pressure on himself to succeed consistently without break, broke him in ways he had not conceived as possible. The fallout of Palpatine's death would have Master Skywalker joining the council in consistent debates, but not a negative thought ran through Anakin's mind. Everything would work out, and he believed that. Not only that, but he trusted the Force and the will of it. Padme would be fine and have a safe pregnancy, which he believed until it became a reality. Ahsoka and Rex returned with the last of the Sith. The Republic tried to turn on the Jedi, but it failed, and of course the Clone War came to an end. The main reason the betrayal of the Jedi failed, because they won it. Due to the Order taking control over the Republic temporarily to sort out the peace treaty, they, with clone loyalty, protected the government from caving in on itself because of Masameda. Though because Anakin was new to the Council and Mace was more familiar with the Republic, Skywalker became an interim Master of the Order. Not that he had the official title, but he functioned inside the temple to best aid returning Jedi from the war. Battle meditation could be used in multiple ways, not just in combat. It was a collaborative effort from the Council that protected those who had struggles with trauma after 3 years of long conflict. All the skills Anakin learned through his steps to battle meditation were applied throughout his life from here on out. It started with the basic stuff, relaxing the mind and feeling out the Force. Then it turned into tackling anxieties and fears with others, because battle meditation is most effective with a team. In months, especially after officially letting go, Anakin felt the most like himself, more than he had in years. It was perfect, and he loved it. Years after the Clone Wars ended, Anakin, still a Jedi Master on the High Council, would find himself inside that vision he had from the temple, the one where he and his family, which too included Ahsoka, Rex, and Obi-Wan, were at a resort. The twins were celebrating their birthday, and everyone had to be there. It was perfect, full of love, and not a single thought of dread to hear from. The Jedi had changed the galaxy, saved it from itself and from the war. Not everyone felt that way, but it was the truth. The Sith were dead or apprehended. The Republic was trending back towards a more united government that actually supported its citizens. That was the joy of Anakin's life, and the fact that he got to have both this and the Jedi meant more than forcing it to work ever could have. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all the patrons for supporting the channel. Smash that like button. Let's talk about it. This is a spiritual story through and through. This I had to do another spiritual story, but this is through and through a spiritual story. First thing I do want to cover, because I'm sure I'm gonna get a nastygram. I know one of you is doing it. The story could potentially come off as a little lazy, because it does go back to Revenge of the Sith, which one might say, well, why would it do that? And I totally get why it could or would be perceived that way, but the concept of the story that I was going for is that Anakin's continuous character flaw is that he's unable to let go. And because battle meditation is him literally refusing to let go, the time he does actually let go, after 3 years of having these terrible nightmares non-stop, is when Padme shows up in them and he's like, you know what? This is the person I care about more than anyone. If I keep fighting this, I could lose her too. So I'm gonna just pull back. I'm gonna just pull back and let it fall apart. And I thought that would be very poetic. There's also another side to this where nothing in the timeline really changes. It does change, but it doesn't. And that is partially because battle meditation with Anakin wouldn't technically change anything. this is very much so a personal story for Anakin than it is a galaxy-wide changing kind of story, like, you know, where he develops Jar Kai and is able to defeat Dooku earlier on. This is literally him developing battle meditation against the generational duelist that is Dooku, and if he's not using the dark side against Dooku, he's not winning that earlier. So this battle meditation doesn't change anything. As I said in the story, the Separatists can just release more battle droids. Anakin's just going to become more popular because he's defeating larger groups of battle droids and not losing any troopers while doing so, or losing, you know, he has the least mortality rate in the clone army, for example. So Anakin just becomes popular in the public eye and nothing changes. And sure, if the Jedi use battle meditation, it would work for them, but it's not like it would change anything either, because the Sith have this reserve military larger than anything. And again, the main point is, this is Anakin's story, and as I said, you know, if you perceive this as lazy, that's fine, but I thought it'd make more sense thematically for almost nothing to change, because that is Anakin's arc. Anakin's consistent arc is trying to change things, thinking he's done it, and then accidentally not doing anything or doing something far worse, which is how he becomes Vader. And so I thought it'd be very interesting for him to have this deep philosophical connection with the Force that does end up saving him. It is because of battle meditation that he lets go in the end, but it's a continuous arc of him finally realizing that he just needs to let go and stop trying to control everything that he can't. And so that was kind of the message of what the story is trying to say, spiritually and personally and emotionally. That's really the essence of the story. It's not really focused or really meant to focus on what happens in the galactic space. This is Anakin's story. So I hope you all enjoyed. Different way to pursue the spiritual side of things. Obviously, I've got some other spiritual concepts that I'm excited for you guys to see coming out soon. But otherwise, I love you all, spread the love, and always, my friends, may the Force be with you.